Right, so we are set to go, and this afternoon, Ghana's housing deficit is in focus as we unpack the government policies and initiatives to bridge the housing gap, which currently stands at 1.8 million. Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Nkrumah, joins me in the studio with more. And this afternoon, there is this beautiful brochure that is out in the public domain. It is an attempt to address what has become an albatross on the Ghanaian, the Saglemi housing project. There's a new initiative to have it, of the pending projects, if you like. And Minister Kojo Nkrumah is right here. Kojo, it's good to have you here. It's very interesting that after being minister from deputy information to substantive minister to now works and housing, this is the first time here you are having one on one.
It's been a while. I've been talking to other people, but we haven't sat down. I'm here today.
Anyway, it's good to see you.
Thanks.
So Saglemi, the new direction, tell me more about it.
Well, just a quick background on Saglemi. Saglemi was part of, may I say, the old model of trying to solve the housing deficit. We have currently, as you rightly mentioned, a housing deficit of 1.8 million units. And what governments have been doing, I think since Kwame Nkrumah's days, is to use taxpayers' money or to borrow money and try to build what they call affordable housing, and sell it to people. So you have the Nkrumah flats around like Tebiokoshi. Then Kutu Echampo also did some of the flats. President Kufuor then started affordable housing. In the Mills Mahama era, first they tried STX, that didn't work, and then they went on to the Saglemi project. Saglemi was about taking a loan of $200 million and making it available to a contractor to build 5,000 houses, which will be sold to the Ghanaian people.
Right. And it is actually on record that this is one of few projects that had the money available even before construction started.
That is true. To date, $196 million was paid to the contractor and the consultants, but 1,506 buildings at various stages of completion was only what was delivered. So when you go onto the site, as I have done both with my technical working group and then the media, you will find units like what you have behind you here, which have the shell completed. Right. You can go in. There are some that have some of the hard finishing in there. There are some that don't have that. There are some of the units somewhere at the back that you'll find they've only done the first floor, but have not completed. There are others where you will even find the foundation level not completed. So the technical expression they give is 1,506 units at various stages of completion.
Out of
5,000 for that $200 million project.
That's 1/3 of the entire project.
Yeah. Now, when Minister Tachia was in the seat, they first had to do an evaluation of the work that had been done. And when the report was produced by the Ghana Institute of Surveyors, the view was that for the work done, it will require about $114 million extra if you're going to finish the 1,506 properties that are there and connect water and electricity and a sewage system to it.
And that would take the cost to $340 million.
Yes, for 1,506. And therefore, if you now try to sell it as affordable housing, it will exceed the affordable housing threshold. The decision was taken.
So the $200 million that's already gone into the project did not factor all this plumbing and provision of water issues, which are key.
Unfortunately, those who designed the project had a particular design for it. The Attorney General or government took a decision that the matter should be investigated. And the Attorney General, upon this investigation, then came to the view that some crimes had been committed and therefore proceeded to court to charge the persons that the department was of the view as having committed the crimes. So that criminal prosecution is ongoing. But we are still left with 1,506 buildings at various stages of completion. So Minister Senso Boakye, when he assumed office, started the process of requesting for the $114 million to complete it. And again, Cabinet had an opportunity to consider it, but came to the view that looking at the financial conditions at the time, etc., and the fact that we are moving to a new dimension where we are not using taxpayers' money to finish these buildings. Government cannot find an extra $114 million after $196 million has been paid.
To the contractor?
Yeah, to the contractor.
And this 140 was to deal with the 1,500?
And the ancillary infrastructure. So government took a decision to go the private sector route and bring in private sector participants to complete and operationalize it. Now, I've assumed office. We have moved quickly into the issuance of the request for proposals. It's an international expression of interest where we're asking developers from all over the world, including Ghana, who have the technical capacity and the capital to come in and look at what we have and work with us to finish it and operationalize it to come forward. And that's what we did yesterday.
So could you, have you costed this?
Yes, we
How
have
much
a cost.
is required to make it habitable? Are we talking about just 1,500 on the entire 5,000?
Well, like I've said, the numbers that we have is that you need 114 million to complete this 1,506 and provide the attendant infrastructure that will make it habitable. And that is what we've put on the table. But we are inviting the private sector to come in and to have a look at what we have. And then they will make a determination, the kind of expertise, the kind of innovation that they want to bring into partner government to complete and to operationalize.
And this project is, and the objective for this new directive is actually what?
Is to ensure that the original objective, which is to develop housing units at affordable price points for the Ghanaian public, is achieved. Despite what has happened, which is now a matter in court and is being looked at, we still have to find a way to complete this project for the use of the Ghanaian people, and that's the objective that we have.
And this was launched when yesterday?
Yesterday. So yesterday we issued the request for proposals. We also yesterday issued the roadmap or the work plan. So about 3 months from yesterday, we expect to receive proposals. So prospective bidders have a 3-month period within which they can come to site, examine the buildings, the dilapidation report, all the master plans, the documentation, everything associated with it, and then they can put together their bids and make it available, I think, by the 8th of July. We'll then go through a process of selecting the bid that we consider most attractive to the government of Ghana. That evaluation will be done by an independent panel of experts in the built environment. And when that selection is done, government will then enter into negotiations to fine-tune what sort of agreement we can get with this private developer or a consortium of developers. And then we'll proceed to sign an agreement and let them move to site and complete the Saglemi.
So whoever is selected, from your analysis, I mean, the amount of money that should be involved is a $114 or $40 million that you just spoke about.
114 is a number that we have based on the Ghana Institute of Surveyors evaluation that they did at the time, which was around, I think, 2017, 2018.
So it is possible that,
those numbers
depending on their own evaluation.
Yes, and that is why one of the things that a prospective bidder will do will be to go to site and do their own independent valuation of what exists there, even as we do a concurrent new valuation and bring the two together for the purposes of negotiation.
Is there certain conditions you are looking for in terms of who qualifies to apply for this project? Well,
if you look at the eligibility criteria that the technical working group has put out, we're looking, for example, for organizations that have experience in large-scale housing projects, organizations that can demonstrate that they have the financial capacity, organizations that have a legal standing of a limited liability company, organizations that can show compliance with local and international standards, organizations that can demonstrate innovation, because this is also to develop a settlement on its own.
Right.
So there are questions about where is the school, where is the hospital, where is the commercial center. So some innovation in how you want to deal with it. Community and social responsibility, technical and managerial ability, as well as ethical business practices. They all come together as part of the eligibility criteria of who qualifies to put in a bid, local and or international.
And since you announced, has there been any response so far?
Already there's been a lot of enquiries, both from the media and then from the investor public, and the direction we give them is to go through the process, go pick up the request for proposals, see the terms that have been put out there, and examine the facilities as we have there, construct your own bid, and then come forward with your bid.
And then when the application is done, what will be the next step in terms of selecting the most suitable for the job? I'm asking because of concerns that have been raised already by your opponents in the NDC who say this is another attempt to allow government cronies to benefit from this project.
Well, I think the first thing that they have done is to express a worry or a fear. And we live in a democracy. It's okay to express a fear that you have. What we have done is also to publish a transparency policy associated with the entire transaction. And the transparency policy talks about all the disclosures of information we are going to make available. It talks about the fact that we have an open and competitive bidding process. For example, nobody's going to get an opportunity to put in a bid before the other. All the bids will be received on the same day, one day to receive all the bids.
Right.
And then at the end of that day, at that 5 p.m. close, all the bids will be opened transparently. So you have clarity on what everybody has brought to the table. We've also committed in our transparency policy that when this transaction is done, in consonance with the proactive disclosure clauses of the Right to Information Act, we will publish, one, all the bids that were received. We'll publish the evaluation report of the independent evaluation panel.
Right.
We will publish the decision memo that at the end, based on all of these, this is the company that is selected as successful bidder. We'll publish that decision memo. And then we shall also publish the final agreement that is entered into with the successful bidder. So we're going to do this transparently and openly, and that's why right from the beginning, we've done this in the public with a lot of sunlight for everybody to see what we're going through. I'm sure if somebody wanted to do something funny, all that you hear will be that maybe somebody's been selected and handed over. But we're going through a transparent process for everybody to see and to participate.
And for that reason, the NDC concerns may be premature. Because the process itself has not been started.
It's a democracy, so people say anything they want to say. That one is not even my worry. But my point is that the facts will not support that particular narrative because we're going through a very transparent process.
And my understanding is that you've also set the timelines within which all of these conditions, all of these applications must be met.
Yes.
So that this can take off as early as possible.
Yeah, if you look at the work plan, so prior to the 17th, there was a lot of work. Remember when I assumed office, we had a technical working group meeting at the Saglemi site, and I gave them 5 weeks to finish all of this work that they needed to do to issue the RFP. And yesterday I commended them that they've managed to do it within 3 weeks. So all of that work took place, and yesterday on the 17th, they issued the RFP. On the 8th of July, they will be receiving the proposals. Between now and then, the site visits, so between the 9th of May, on the 9th of May is when they start the site visits with the prospective bidders. So all prospective bidders have the opportunity to go to site, examine all the documentation, do their own valuation, etc., that is required from that period onwards. And then by the 8th of July, they will be able to then formally tender in a bid. They'll go through the evaluation process, selection, and then the negotiation. And we expect that by the 30th of August, we, all things being equal, should be able to sign a contract with a prospective bidder to come partners to finish Saglemi.
So hopefully work should start before the end of the year.
According to the work plan, according to the work plan, site possession is supposed to be in September, so that by the 23rd of September, according to this work plan that I have here, they should be able to start mobilizing on site.
But let me ask you, is this the most workable way out in terms of getting Saglemi to become a habitable, abode?
There are 3 ways to deal with Saglemi. 1 is to leave it as is. 2 is for the government of Ghana, after paying $196 million out of the $200 million for 5,000 houses and getting 1,506 buildings at various stages of completion, the government of Ghana can then get to a point where it says it can't sink any further taxpayers' money or borrow money further into it.
Right. Or
if it wants to use a second option to say that we're going to use taxpayers' money or borrow to spend extra beyond the 196, then we have to come to that decision. Option 3 is to partner the private sector. So the private sector developers who have the expertise and the resources will come and partner government. So that government doesn't use extra resources, but we're still able to finish these projects, and then we're able to deliver them to the market. You would recall that already, even sometimes virgin land, you have private developers going there, clearing the land and trying to build. I bought my house in Tema Community 25, somewhere around 2009, thereabout. It was literally
no man's land.
No man's land. The private developer, Deftraco, went there, cleared the land and was building there. Today, you have semi-finished products which already take away a bit of the cost. So we think that it's comparatively easier for a private developer or a consortium of developers to come together and work on helping us to complete this project.
And you are certain that this will be the final step to get this project, off the pending projects?
We are expectant that we will get a lot of private sector interest to work with us, not only on this, But for instance, when you go to Koforidua right now, President Kufuor's affordable housing project is still there in the bush because the model that was being used at the time, often waiting for taxpayers' money or borrowed funds to complete it, suffers some constraints. We're expecting that this new model, where the government works with the private sector, gives the private sector the necessary support or subsidy to deliver housing, is the way to go, and it will be teed off by the kind of support that we'll get in this. We have a housing deficit, as I mentioned, of 1.8 million units.
I was just going to come to that to tell me the plan, the strategy that you are putting forward to address it. But maybe two quick questions on Saglemi, then we can look at the housing sector in general. So you are an accountant, a lawyer, and you've looked at the documents. The handing over knows the issues surrounding Saglemi. How will you describe it? Was it just to dissipate public funds in a way that has been done to the extent that you pay a contractor almost $200 million to give me 5,000, units of housing? They're able to provide 1,500. Even that does not even meet standard.
I'm a lawyer, like you said. The matter is a matter which is currently subject of criminal prosecution, and therefore I would not be quick to comment on it. The Attorney General has put his view before the court. The court will examine his view and make a determination whether or not a crime has been committed there. But my job is not necessarily to describe it, it's to work towards fixing it, and that's what I'm working on.
One of the contractors died along the way. I hope, has it affected the case in any way?
Not to my understanding, no.
And I also heard from the Member of Parliament for the area. According to him, they gave the land to government for government to put forth an affordable housing project. Now, government is introducing the private sector into the scheme, and that changed the dynamics, according to Sam George, and that there should be a need for a renegotiation of the land. I don't know whether this has also been factored into this new plan.
That has not come to my attention. I think that government is still committed to deliver an affordable housing project at Saglemi. It is now a question of where is the funding coming from, because the original model was for the state to make money available to the contractor will develop, and then it will be sold. The state made money available to the contractor, $196 million out of $200 million to the contractor and the consultants, and in return the state has this. The state now says that it wants to use private sector funding to finish it and still make it available for operationalization.
And the assurance is
in my view, respectfully, the dynamics have not necessarily changed. It's a source of funding that is changing now. And our objective is to ensure that we're able to finish this and make it available to the public.
And the assurance we're providing this afternoon is that no government spending addition will go into this project.
I think the cabinet decision is clear. We have been very open in how we are announcing it, that what we are doing is bringing in private sector funding to come and complete the project. We'll also go through a process of negotiating with whichever private sector player is selected as the successful bidder and come to an agreement on how we can work together to finish it. So let's go through the steps.
Right, so my guest is the Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Nkrumah. We are talking about housing and Saglemi. Now let's talk about the 1.8 million housing deficit and your plans to reduce it. Is it really government business to be involved in this area?
Housing is a basic human need. If you study Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's food, clothing, shelter.
Right.
It's a basic human need. There are jurisdictions in which housing is actually classified in their constitution as a right. I was reading the Kenyan constitution this dawn, and you'll find it therein that every, I think, citizen has a right to housing. And pursuant to that right in their constitution, the government has gone on further to even introduce schemes that ensure that it can assist in delivering housing. In many parts of the world, the old model of government building houses and selling to the public, or folding its arms and leaving it to the private sector to build for itself, is changed. And what governments are doing is that they are giving incentives to private sector players and crowding them in to deliver housing at their preferred price point. The reason is that if you don't do it, what ends up happening is that you have high demand like we do here in Ghana, about 1.8 million units. You have low supply, and the consequence is that landlords, property agents just take advantage of people. Landlords are taking 2 years rent, sometimes 3 years rent. Property agents are giving people the short end of the stick. Why? Because the supply is way lower than the demand. The way you go about it is by supporting the private sector, giving them the necessary incentives so that it is easier and cheaper for them to construct, And it is also easier and cheaper for people who qualify to get a mortgage to take up those properties. That's how come you can have a program in Morocco that they call the Cities Without Slums,
right,
where they are giving incentives to the private sector. In Abidjan, where I was a few days ago, the state is giving a lot of incentives to the private sector so that the private sector can deliver housing at an affordable price point. In fact, they have even come down to what they call social housing,
right,
where you can get buildings at very, very, very lower prices because the state has provided those incentives. So here in Ghana, what we are doing now, to answer your question, is that we are putting together an incentives package. We've already started working on and engaging with GREDA, material suppliers, the banks, etc., on an incentives package for housing in Ghana. When we are done with the consultations, we'll lay it before Cabinet for approval. I intend to go to Parliament also.
Is it different from the one that is ongoing at Apukuase? What you're talking about?
That is a specific program,
okay,
an affordable housing program. But you need a bigger framework
to guide it.
That actually provides incentives packages for private sector developers who want to come in, master developers who want to come in and do 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, build integrated cities in parts of the world. When we watch CNN, we all see what they call the new cities that are being developed and how they are going about it. The way they are doing it is not government borrowing $200 million to do it or government using taxpayers' money. The way they do is that they provide incentives to master developers who would then come in. So we are going through an engagement process to arrive at an incentives package. We will engage, travel the country, let the country know what incentives package we want to take to Parliament, and hopefully get parliamentary buy-in on an incentives package. It is a kind of package like that that will then attract private developers. They will then ask themselves, why do I go to Kenya when I'll get a better package from Ghana? Why do I go to South Africa or to Austria or Abidjan when I can get a better package in Ghana? So we have to become a bit more competitive. That's the way we can provide decent housing at affordable price points for the majority.
And talking about being competitive, and the primary source of all of this is the land. You and I know the confusion around land ownership in this country.
Yeah.
Is there a plan to streamline it?
At least just by learning from other countries, what you do is that you make available land banks. So here in Ghana, we've already got land banks. Lands that have been acquired by the state for the purposes of housing and other things. So with the benefit of those land banks, we already have a first mover advantage. And I'm very optimistic that the land banks will form part of the incentives package that we are looking to make available to the private sector to come in and to work with us to solve the housing deficit.
Some say that there is over-concentration of some of these schemes in Accra and sometimes in the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, to the neglect of the other regions.
I totally agree. I come from a village community. In fact, this morning I had a meeting. One of my first meetings was with my district director of education and my district director of health. And one of the things they are complaining about is getting accommodation for young teachers, nurses who've been posted to the district to come and educate our children. They come around and all they are seeing are mud houses, no decent housing. They quickly go for a transfer and want to go.
It doesn't encourage them to stay.
And that is why one of the things that we are starting is a district housing program. In fact, the first version of this was a rural housing program introduced by Kofi Abrefi-Buzia. Those who are familiar with the economic history of Ghana will recall. We want to get back on track with a district housing program, and we've already had a number of agreements with the Ministry of Finance. Minister Amin has been very, very helpful.
Okay.
What the district housing program will help us to do will be to build in the districts with local materials. And Elton, it's important to build with local materials because the cost of construction materials themselves are high.
Right.
You've got to find a way to bring down the cost of construction materials. So we're bringing together local materials and cheaper financing so that we can deliver houses in the districts at a lower price. The technical team has just finished all the concept designs and the costing. We have requested for a commencement certificate from finance. Once we get that commencement certificate, we will make the necessary announcement, break ground, and start a district housing program, which will answer your question of providing housing in the districts as well, and not just concentrating in Accra.
Is it different from the proposal you have before Cabinet that you are hoping to take before Parliament?
The proposal that we have, or that we are putting together, the incentives package, is for a general housing policy, which attracts master developers to come in and to do the big cities, 5,000, 15,000, 20,000 settlements, etc. That is one of the solutions to the housing deficit. Another solution is district housing,
Right.
where government itself works with private developers to go into the districts and to deliver with local materials and cheaper financing at the district level. Because when you're working with the private sector generally and you provide these master incentives and you want 5,000, 10,000, they're not going to go to Ofuasi to
At all.
10,000. They will probably want to do it somewhere in Kumasi or in Accra where the population numbers are higher. But that is also why then you need to pay attention to the districts and get in there as well. So we have the affordable housing program like Pokwasi, which will continue.
Exactly.
We have the district housing program, which we are about to roll out. And then we are also now looking to bring the general housing incentives, which would attract the private sector to do the master developments that we are looking for.
What about those that stand abandoned, like some of the projects that were started in the here in the Greater Accra? I know that the Sokore Mampon one is some already occupied. It's almost like completed and handed over. Yes. What about the rest?
So, for example, Koforidua has about 380 units, if my math is correct, of President Kufuor's affordable housing, which is still in the bush.
Long time ago.
Yes. What we have done since I assumed office, I've met with the board chairman and the managing director of State Housing. It is one of our priorities. We're going to go through a process of assisting State Housing to get the financing for it so that they can quickly move in there and complete it. Elton, and I said this yesterday, the phenomena where housing projects are abundant when successive governments come up is something that we must turn a page on.
And I totally agree.
And we must quickly work to complete these uncompleted projects, also so that investors have confidence that when the government of Ghana, forget which administration, when the red, yellow, green with the black star in the middle says that they want to do this housing project, take them seriously and participate.
Right. And so the expectation is that all this will be completed.
We're going to start. We will do our best to start, time and resource allowing, as many as we can complete during the period we will. I
know you have a lot of agencies under you, but will you consider housing maybe the most challenging in the ministry?
I think there are quite a number of things. Flooding is a major matter on its own. We have a national flood control program, which over the years has not been very well funded. So far, the data that we've put together suggests that we've only been tackling 2% of the Greater Accra flooding challenge, only 2%. And that's because of a resource constraint. It is taking the World Bank to come in and assist us as a republic with a Garrett project. And even that one has had problems in implementation, and we're trying to move the contractors and the consultants to be a bit quicker. So that's a challenge on its own. Then you have the coastal protection challenges. Tidal waves are rising. Global warming is leading to rising water levels. We have a lot of our coastal lines that are now being attacked by high waves. I've recently done a tour of the Western Corridor, where there are major challenges. Go to Dansoman, for example. Parts of the road are being eaten up now because of the sea waves. And we have to, again, contend with that and mitigate or build these sea defense projects to protect them. So there are a number of challenges, but in the time and resource constraints that are handed to us, we'll do our best.
And you have the resources to execute them?
We don't have all the resources. We have to make a case for the resources. We continue to make a case for the resources. I'm very grateful to the Minister for Finance, my brother Amin, who understands very much the need to provide and to prioritize some of these things, and we look forward to working together to deliver as much of the solutions as possible.
I must personally confess that entity like State Housing Company is doing a great job.
They are doing a great job.
I mean, the kind of houses that
they are doing a great job.
They've put forth, and the amount of money they are charging for those houses compared to the private developers. Yeah. Clearly, I'm sure that if they are more resourced, they will take a lead role in the agenda that you are pursuing.
They are doing a great job. We have to work on improving their capitalization so that they will have a bigger resource port. Some of the challenges I'm throwing to them is that in other jurisdictions, companies like theirs are listed
on the stock exchange.
On the stock exchange. And when they demonstrate that they are doing so well, what ends up happening is that they get a lot of literally free equity injection into them, which reduces their cost of construction financing, or even if they are borrowing, blends and therefore reduces the cost, and therefore they can take on bigger projects out there. It's just a challenge that I've been throwing to them. It's not an instruction or anything, but they are doing very well. I commend the board chairman and the managing director. I commend my predecessors, Minister Sensu Boachi, Minister Tachia, who also led the policy direction there under the president's initiative. They've done pretty well. We need them to do more and not just cater to the higher end of affordable housing, but also to come down some more.
Well, somebody is asking me that the person is taking me back to Saglemi and asking whether, after all, if everything is done, would it still qualify to be called an affordable housing, knowing the amount of money that is going into it? Are you going to cost it based on the fact that government has already sunk in $200 million and a private investor will be hoping to bring in even more?
It's a legitimate question. No, first of all, it's a legitimate question. Secondly, you must understand that we're now going to go into negotiations with private developers, so I can't put all my cards on the table. Thirdly, the point I'll make is that our objective is to still have a price point that is affordable to the everyday Ghanaian out there. And in the midst of the negotiations, we will come up with the best package that allows us to do that.
So we are not there yet?
We're not there yet. We haven't reached that stage yet.
But there's the possibility that the value may go up because of all the things that has gone into it.
Well,
there's
like
also the possibility the government may intervene and get it to be sold at an affordable price.
It is possible. All things are possible. For now, we have put the RFP on the table. We look forward to getting their responses, and then we'll enter into negotiations with the prospective bidders.
I mean, you have few months in this before you go for the next election, and the expectation from your end, I'm sure, that will be to break the 8. But what legacy are you hoping to leave at the ministry? Let's start with housing first.
So when I assumed office, we quickly did a retreat to try and prioritize what we can do during the period. And we've come up with about a 7-part priority list. One of it being to accelerate the affordable housing projects that we are doing. So in next few weeks, we're going to break ground for 832 new homes in Tema, Bong. Between myself, Alice, the chief executive of TDC, and she's done a fantastic job, Honorable Braco, the board chairman, and the entire board and management, we've managed to lock down the funding for it. And so in the few weeks...
This is government-private?
This is government working with TDC,
right,
which is, a government entity, but it operates very efficiently. And we're going to work with, private subcontractors to do this at TDC. 832 new homes in Tema. In Pokwase, for example, and I'm coming from Pokwase actually, right, I have a standing site meeting with the developers every 2 weeks. We want to fast-track work. We have not laid even one block at Pokwase yet. We've been doing the ground infrastructure, road, sewage, electricity, etc. But my big objective is to quicken the work by which we get the vertical units up. So in affordable housing, we want to quicken the process. And we also want to start the district housing program, as I've just explained to you. There are a number of services at the ministry that are, manual. Today, contractors come from Paga to the ministry to come and apply for certificates and fill them.
All the way?
All the way. And I've quickly given instructions on how we can digitize that so that you can apply in Paga, it can be processed online, and you can print your certificate in Paga. Right. You don't need to come down. So we're digitizing a number of services at the ministry, including even the allocation of government flats and bungalows to public sector workers, as well as a few things. Those are like some of the top 3 things that we are doing. But one of the biggest things that we want to do is to be able to put in place a proper incentives framework. I admit we may not be able to implement it in the next 9 months and succeed by doing any project with it, but we want to put this framework in place, this incentives package in place, so that successive ministers who will come after me will have an easier path forward, because then the framework has been laid and advertised, and private developers know how to come in and participate and then run as quickly as they can.
But for you, do you think we'll get to that stage maybe in the next few years to come where a young person who graduates from the university and start work, that person wouldn't have to worry about saving to buy a land, but only have to worry about building his credit to approach
so that I can qualify for a mortgage.
Housing doesn't become a challenge he has to fight for the rest of his life.
First of all, that's what we must aspire to get to. Secondly, I'm very optimistic. I believe in the ability of Ghanaian enterprise to deliver very, very bold and innovative solutions to the Ghanaian market. What has been missing over the years is the collaboration with the public sector that unleashes the best potential of the Ghanaian private sector. And I believe that with this new model that we are working with, public-private partnership, the most innovative, efficient, brilliant private sector operators will find the Ghanaian housing market as a home within which they can then deliver these housing units, like it's been done in Morocco and in other places.
Finally, before I take leave of us, the rainy season is setting in. What assurance are you giving us that you're on top of your job and then we didn't have to revisit the old spectacle of flooding in the area?
I'm sorry to break your heart, but we're already behind schedule on the flood control program because of resource constraints that we have had. I have inherited a flood control program that is behind schedule. As I've told you, even what we are doing is just about 2% of what we should be doing in the Greater Accra region.
The last time we checked, the amount of money involved runs into billions of cedis.
It's $200 million. So yes, if you do the conversion, it will run into billions. It's a $200 million project funded by the World Bank. That's a Garrett project. But what has actually been released or spent is not up to $200 million. But the implementation has been slow for a number of reasons. I think just last week I met the contractors and the coordinator, Dr. Ohene, to urge them to quicken the pace of work with what they are doing now. I mean, if you go to the Kaneshie areas, for example, all the work that needs to be done there is not even been done yet.
Yes.
And so until it is done, and to do that, we have to do the engagement with the people, pay compensation to project-affected people, secure the land lots that we need. We have to do detention ponds that will arrest water coming from the hilly areas of the Greater Accra region. So there's a lot of work to be done. Not all of it has been done. We are running as much as we can. I'm sure you see me every time with the contractors, chasing them, trying to get their payments for them so that they can deliver. But we are behind schedule.
So therefore, we'll have to endure it for
the
next few years ahead of us.
We are behind schedule. We will do our best with the resources and time that we have, and we'll make a case for more resources and some more seriousness in getting the work done so that in the shortest possible time, it will be a thing of the past. Remember that flooding is a combination of things. A, the water channels to evacuate water, and two, a certain level of rainfall. When you have inordinate amounts of rainfall,
there's nothing you can do
even
about
with
it.
the best channels. I mean, look at what's happening in Dubai.
I was just coming to that.
Yeah. So I think we must also have that.
Supposed well-planned city.
We must have that at the back of our mind. So we will do our best with the resources and time that we have. We are behind schedule, and we will move as quickly as we can within the constraints.
But from now to December, you also have a lot. You have political issues on your hands. Will you have all the time and the energy and space to also concentrate on your mandate as a minister responsible for works and housing?
I told you this morning, my first two meetings were with my district director of education and health. And then after that, I went to Pokwase for a site meeting with all the contractors and engineers, etc.
And of course, you will also be calling.
Yes, my district director of health and education are from the constituency. So there's a lot to do, but it's public service. We will chew gum and walk at the same time.
Sure. Kojo, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
It's always been. All right. Kojo Pankroma is the Minister for Works and Housing. We've been talking about housing and the new agenda going forward, especially to resolve the Saglemi housing project once and for all. We'll take a short break. When we return, we have more on the pause for you this afternoon.
They just can't see all.